I'm going to show a walkthrough of a simple spreadsheet that I use to keep track of my recurring expenses, my recurring income. In the description below the video, you will see a link. And when you click on that link, it will give you the option to create a copy of the spreadsheet for yourself, which is showing right here. You'll click on Make a Copy. If you are not sure where to go to find any previous spreadsheets that you've ever created or edited with your Google account, I'll put that link below as well, but it's a simple link right here. It is sheets.google.com, and if you go to that section, the only sheet in this particular Google account here is the one that I have just created, which is a copy of the shared income and expense recurring sheet. So the main page is right here. Essentially, I have a page, a tab for monthly expenses, and I have a tab for annual expenses. So if those are the most common recurrence, right? You either got a month-to-month bill or it renews once a year. On the left-hand side, I have the day of the month, and then because I use two currencies in my daily business, I've got an option here for incoming expenses in Canadian dollars and US dollars, incoming revenue in Canadian and US, and outgoing expenses in Canadian and US. So if, for example, you want to start populating this, you don't have to use all these numbers here. I was just using that as an example. You can highlight everything here, hit the delete key on your keyboard, and let's say the first expense that you find, the easiest way is to get your credit card statements and your bank statements and just look through them for the last month or the last 2 months. Say that on the 10th, you have an outgoing expense for $49 Canadian. So you would say on the 10th of the month, which is going to be recurring every month, your outgoing expense is, let's just say it's going to be $35.90. And as you go through, let's say you've got another one on the 13th, and you've got some outgoing expenses of $159. The 26th, you've got expenses of $250. And you get the idea, and you see your monthly totals here. They are adding up. You have everything in the outgoing column, nothing in the incoming column. So basically your net at this point is your expenses minus your income. Because you have no recurring revenue, you're paying $444.99 every single month in expenses. And if that is the amount of money that you're spending, if you only had 3 recurring expenses every month, congratulations, that's a fraction of what most of us have. You are spending $5,339.88 per month. Just lets you kind of see at a glance what's going on. The 20th, and you can put them, it doesn't really matter what order, you can always sort them later, but if you realize you want the 20th above where you see the 26th, if you click on this column here, right click on it, you can insert a row above and say the 20th, and then let's say you've got some incoming dollars here. Let's say you have a customer that pays you $300 a month for whatever your service is. So now you see you've got 300 in the income column versus your 444.99, which means you're only down 144.99 at this point, where things are. The other thing that's handy for me is today is January 16th. If I am looking at this calendar and I open it up and I see, okay, it's the 16th, I know that in 4 days I have $300 coming in, and the 26th I have $50 coming out. Put a little description that says what each of these things is. If this is a video editing subscription. And another thing that I like to do for the outgoing expenses is just make a note here of which account that comes out of. If you've got a particular card that you use for US expenses, just make a note that it comes out of your US expense card or your Canadian expense card. Keeps an idea of how to basically see where the dollars are coming from and where they're going to. So if we go to the annual tab, let's say, for example, and again, this is something you don't necessarily have to use these existing numbers here. They're just the dates. The dates are just what I put in there just as an example. So let's say the very first expense that you have is on January 25th, and you are paying $1,100 for what should we say? I will make it. Let's say we'll make it $600 for an Adobe subscription. And actually, we can even go one step more complicated. And if I take that out of here and I say that that was a U.S. expense, so we say that's going to be $600 U.S., which is down here, and you see that it does a conversion for you to $864. So where it gets the information for that little conversion formula is on the main page here. I just take the existing Bank of Canada rate. So like if you do $1 US to Canadian dollar, you'll see right now the rate is $1.44. So on the front here, you have $1.44. On this section here, now you see it actually imports your annual totals. So the annual total, it's bringing in and showing you that it's a $600 expense. It's getting converted to $864. You see $864 in the Canadian list of expenses. So these two tabs are expenses, these two tabs are income, as indicated by in and out. And this line down here shows the Canadian totals for all of the monthly expenses. This shows the Canadian totals for all of the annual expenses. And when you've got US dollars, it does the conversion of any of those to Canadian dollars based on this US dollar rate here. So there's a few moving parts, but it stays pretty simple, right? Like if the Canadian dollar goes to a fantastic rate and all of a sudden everything is $1.20, if you look over here, right now I'm at $2,600 based on $1.44. If I tab out of this field, now we're saving a couple $100 a year, which is handy. But that's the basics of it. There's not much more to it than that. You can clear anything within the layout. You see here, whenever you're copying and pasting a piece of information, you see it killed this little border that I throw in here. If you click that cell, choose your border and choose the right hand border again, it'll put that in. If you're just manually typing in the numbers here, it's because I did a copy and paste. If you're just manually typing the numbers in here, adding, deleting columns, you shouldn't have to worry about that. Another thing that can be handy to do, let's say for example you have on the 27th of every month you have an outgoing US expense of, say, maybe you have a US subscription of Apple TV and it's a personal expense. You can keep track of your personal monthly expenses in here too. And what I do is I would say $12 US, Apple TV. You can select this whole row right here, everything related to the date and notes. Mouse over here, and this has got a fill color, so usually what I do, I choose colors out of this third row here, which is the lightest version of it. So if I know I've got a personal expense, for example, I just give it a little bit of a blue hue, just so that visually I realize that there's an expense that's coming up. It's going to be a personal expense. And if you realize it's coming out of your personal credit card, make a little note there, and it's adding the information in here too, right? So we've got $12 US. That $12 US was converted to $17.28 Canadian, which then got added to the $444.99 for a total of $462.27. So it's easy just to kind of keep an ongoing total, and as each month goes by, you'll just populate this when you realize that something got missed. Whenever you take a look through your monthly statements, it's easier once they're all in order to go through your credit card statement and do a quick reconciliation and say, okay, we got this, we got this, we got this, and maybe you realize, oh, I missed something on the 6th of the month. So we go to the very top here, we right click, we add a line above, and we add in the option for the 6th, and you've got an expense of, there's another example of how adding that little line can sometimes be a little bit flaky. You see the border is gone. It's because you're at the very top. Let's undo that. And if you are, let's say we were doing it for the 12th, if you insert a row in the middle of existing rows, it carries forward all of the information from above so that you don't have to worry about missing lines. Just when you're at the very, very top and you're putting something at the top of the list, you put the row above sometimes it just misses the little pieces of border that are in there. So we'll drop this in here, and we'll drop this in here. Let's say that was going to be for the 6th, and we had an outgoing expense of $51.25, and let's say here we had something going out on the 11th of $26. So you can see it adds up pretty quick when you've got just a handful of subscriptions, right? It's especially if you're not taking into consideration income. If all you have is expenses and you don't have recurring revenue, it's going to add up quick. And if you're looking here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little 6 expenses, which is basically totaling $6,000 a year. Another thing you can do, even if you are not a recurring revenue service individual, if you know that on a particular day every month or every 2 weeks, whatever it happens to be, you're getting a salary or a deposit that is going to be fairly consistent. Let's say you get paid on the 7th of every month and your income is $500. After the information is going to be listed in here, hang on here, let's kill that. Yeah, it seems like every once in a while Google Sheets will flake out a little bit here. So if you see, you've got a section here where the border was missing. I dropped the border back inside of there. I mean, the borders, you don't necessarily even have to use the borders. It's not something that you have to worry about. But every once in a while, if you're totaling things up on a sheet that's got a bunch of different totals on there, if you go to the end of the list here, you see at the top, you're going to see the formula. So because I added a couple of links at the very top of the page, it got a little bit confused. So if you see on this cell right here, it shows B4, and B4 is actually right here. It just happens to be because I got right at the very top of the page. What I will do is I'm going to add a blank row at the very top. So when you go to make a copy of this particular document, you're going to see it kind of come through like this here. We will delete everything just so that things are not complicated. So I'll double check these two columns here entirely. Okay, so this is what I'll do to simplify it. At the very top of this page, this is what it's going to look like. We're going to insert a row. Actually, we're going to do it this way. You'll get the document, and it's going to look like this. It's going to have the numbers 1 through 31. And anytime you're going to be adding here, then if you, instead of adding from this very top line, if you're adding an individual date, you're just going to be adding it from here. So if you're adding, right now we see $5. So the $5 is totaling here. And if we go to the top here and we insert a row above, and then we go to $5 again, now you will see everything is fine. So as long as you just basically leave this top row blank, and then you won't have any weird little quirks that Google sometimes drops in there. But that's the simple part. Like I said, as soon as you click on the link to download a copy of this particular document, it's just going to show a blank line at the very top. Just leave a blank line at the top, and I'll do the same thing here. Have a blank line sitting at the top of the annual file, and that's it.